Good afternoon, everybody. Back for another another study stream. This is our weekly wrap-up session for the current week of facing raises as the Cbettor on the flop. I'm just going to share this real quick that we are now live, sharing it with the Facebook group as well as sharing it with the Twitter group, the Twitter heads, all them tweet peeps out there. Cool beans. So we are officially, let me just double check this. Looks like we're live. Good to see you all today. So earlier we did day 21, just the regular study session. And that was a hand reading practice, lessons learned from the video from Split Suit, and a review of my own overpairs facing check raise situations. So now, of course, we decided, or we are doing the weekly wrap-up. So I'll review our plan from the start of the week, hit the various things that we talked about on day 15 there. We'll also next cover day by day, kind of like what we studied, just a real quick glimpse at the day by day work that we did. After that, reviewing the one sheet, which is something that I make after every week of study. It condenses everything I learned into one piece of paper. Next is the 5-question quiz, and then we'll follow that up or finish it off with a mind map. So let's get to it. Review our plan from the start of the week here. So the theme of the week was facing flop raises as the Cbettor, and I had come up with 3 hypotheses when I started the week. One of them was most of the flop check raises, also in position raises of my C-bets, those check raises that I face are bluffs or semi-bluffs with good draws. Most of the flop check raises, yes, found this to be case roughly are bluffs or semi-bluffs. Oh, whoops. I was thinking backwards. No. Found that most raises and check raises are for value roughly 80% of the time. Roughly 70 to 80 was what I found. When I typed that out earlier, I found that backwards. And then we'll talk about that in a little bit, but earlier I found through that very first day going through hands that all those different raises and check raises I was facing was for value for the most part. The other hypothesis, most opponents call flops with showdown-worthy hands like second and third pair instead of check raising. And that's true, as well as they call with random hands and more so by unbelieving fish. We find lots of calls by unbelieving fish. I remember that one hand that we had, king high flop, and the guy called with queen 3 and rivered a full house on a 3 nines on the board or something like that. We got extra value out of him because we had a good pair. If I remember that hand correctly. But yeah, he called with nothing at all, just hoping to hit a pair, which is great. Love those unbelieving fish. You know, we get value from those guys. And the last hypothesis that I came up with was, I think that flop min check raises are mostly just straight bluffs, not nut flush draws or open-ended straight draws or even a good made hand like 2 pair or better. So I really didn't have a big enough sample to justify this, but it feels correct, although I wouldn't take this to the bank. Min check raises can be for value because maybe the board isn't scary. Maybe their hand is so good that they have nothing to be, they're not worried about your flush draw or a straight draw or 2 pair or anything. So it depends, but it just feels right. Min check raises on the flop feel like bluffs, but I need definitely a bigger sample to go through to kind of analyze that. What I can actually do is... I can look through my students' hands for more samples to justify this idea that min check raises and even min raises are bluffs more often than not. We'll see though. So right here, with every new week of study, I choose some quantifiables, some different stats to go through to take a look at to see how my stats change before and after my week of study. So the first stat right here, and some of these did change from what I had at the beginning of the week because as I was going through and learning, it made more sense to look at some different stats and stuff. So the first stat was my win rate as the pre-flop raiser with the opportunity to c-bet. So my win rate year to date at the beginning of the week was 70. At the end of the week, after 1,700 hands, it's 127 big blinds per 100, which is great. You know, yay, win rate went up by 57 big blinds per 100. That's good. In position, my win rate went from 47 big blinds per 100 hands to negative 276, and that's 56 hands total at negative $38 profit. But my out of position at the beginning of the week was 101 big blinds per 100. At the end of the week, I was at 849, and that was 21 hands, and I was up $44. So in all, yeah, sure, that looks bad, but it's a small sample of just 1,700 hands where I had the opportunity to c-bet the flop. Very small sample. One good thing is you can see most of these are in position. So most of my chances to c-bet are when I'm, raising in position, which makes sense, of course, because you get called by a lot of blinds. But, negative 38 plus 44, altogether I'm up $6 in opportunity to c-bet, those chances right there. So that's good. The fact that it's negative is bad, but it's a small sample, only 56 hands, so I can't put too much into that. But overall, I'm up between the two. Now, c-betting the flop win rate, just if you just filter for when you c-bet the flop, my win rate is 166 at the beginning of the week. C-betting win rate is much higher than just the opportunity to c-bet right there, because sometimes you have the opportunity and don't c-bet, but when you actually make the c-bet, you have some fold equity as well as you're getting value with your value hands right there. So the win rate is higher. It's much higher here as well. You could see when I'm c-betting this past week, 265 big blinds per 100 hands. Super awesome win rate right there. I love that. I'm just going to keep on c-betting, of course, to keep that win rate nice and high. You don't want to c-bet too much because then you become too bluffy and opponents can take advantage of that. You want to keep it at some, at a good rate, roughly 60, 65, 70% in that range. Or we could just say roughly 65. Let's see. Number of times faced a raise after a flop c-bet. So year to date was 23 hands, a decent sample. But out of the 1,700, I only faced a raise as a c-better 6 times. It's a small sample. It's tough to learn too much from that, just from the number, Now, fold to the raise after the c-bet was 52%, then 50. Okay. Call the raise after the c-bet, 26, then 17. 3-bet after 3-bet raise after I c-bet and somebody re-raises me, 22 and 33. Now, 6 hands, it's a small sample. It's tough to compare numbers. I need to review each individual hand to gauge my play. There's only 29 hands to review total, 23 here and 6 here. Totally worth it. We reviewed a lot of these hands as we were throughout the week and everything. Probably not all 29, but we reviewed quite a few of them, especially ones that resulted in bigger pots and bigger losses or bigger wins. We reviewed a lot of those. But it's only 29 hands. That should take 1 or 2 sessions most of study to get through those hands and see what we can learn from those different times when we get raised as the c-better. C-bet flop success is basically, it just calculates how many times you've won the pot with no resistance. So you c-bet, they fold. That's all it is. You can't put too much behind this number. If you're a really tight c-better and you c-bet a very small amount of the time because maybe you only c-bet when you hit, sure, they're going to know you're flop honest and they're going to fold a heck of a lot, so your c-bet success percentage will be high. If you c-bet 100% of the time, it's going to be low because people are going to put you as a bluffer. So I don't put too much stake in these numbers. That's why these aren't bolded. You can see all the important numbers I've been bolding. Unimportant stuff I don't bold over here. Red means it's negative. Negative here. Fold to check raise, 53 and 50, basically the same. Fold to donk, 47 and 63. Yeah, so I'm folding less often, but unless I go in and analyze those hands where I face a donk bet, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know that this percentage or this is good or that this is good going up. I just don't know. It requires further research, like a full week into donk bets. Facing donk bets would be a good thing for sure. Fold to flop, float bet is what this one is. And before the week of study, it was 83%. That means I'm just folding way too much. I'm checking, and then I'm checking when I have the opportunity to c-bet, and my opponent in position decides to bet. Well, I was folding 83% of the time. They were just making money hand over fist by betting every single time I check. Now, my goal was to decrease it, and negative 20%, which is definitely good. I'm not folding as much, which means I'm calling with the second pair, with third pairs, with decent draws, with top pair weak kicker. I'm calling, and I'm just not giving up so easily, which is a good thing. I need to make myself harder to play against. So dropping that was good. Turn c-bet. Great. I c-bet 54% at the beginning of the week. Throughout the week, 62%. Nice. I've upped it, making myself more harder to play against, making it so I'm utilizing fold equity a little bit more often on the turn. I'm putting extra pressure on my opponents right there. So that's plus 8%, and I wanted it to be higher. So I'm loving this right now. Let's see here. The study method. So off the felt, I wanted to study the course chapter 2, or I should say skill number 2, which I studied that, and I studied that on session number 17 towards the beginning of the week there. I also did lots of PokerTracker 4 filtering, and you guys saw all of that. I did lots of hand reviews in leaky spots, not necessarily in leaky spots, but in raise facing spots. I did a ton of hand reading practice. You guys were there through all of it. I watched videos, I read articles, I did a forum post, and in episode or study session number 20, and I did meditation. I didn't do it, on the stream right here with you, but I did it pre and post session. Not pre and post, I'm sorry, pre-session, or sometimes I would do it post session. So meditation took place. On the felt, I did my warm-ups. I didn't warm up every time like I had wanted to, but I did warm-ups. Focus sessions, of course, volume sessions plenty, and I did use tick sheets, and I've talked about tick sheets in the past. So these were the different, there were 8 different pieces of media that I wanted to consume to help me understand check raising and facing raises and playing post flop against aggression. So out of all of these, 1, 2, 3 things I failed to study exactly, but I studied the other 5, some good videos and some great articles. A 4th thing I failed to study. So I studied 4 out of the 8, 50%. So I could go back and get to studying with these and learn a little bit more about facing aggression as the Cbettor. So let's review day by day real quick. Day 15 was the basic plan. We've already talked about this. I had some goals. I wanted to hit 2,400 hands. I hit 1,700 6 max, and I think I hit 300 or 400 full ring, so roughly 2,000, a little bit less than I had targeted. But it's a shortened week because I'm not here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so not too bad. Warm-up prior to each session, almost. I didn't do it every time, but almost every time. Stream at least 45 minutes of poker play on Twitch 3 times. I only streamed once. I might be doing a stream later on today, so that'll get me up to 2. 2 study streams on Tuesday, Wednesday, and 2 next Monday. Yes, accomplishing that. Those are those hypotheses we talked about. Here are the initial stats, study methods and content. Okay, so the first day of study, we learned facing turn check raises, Jonathan Little post. That was really good stuff. Did a database review and went through 10 different hands, and out of those hands we found that our opponents were raising for value 70% of the time. It's 7 out of 10 and only bluffing 30% right there. So that just goes to show it is a small sample. Ed Miller talks about your opponents are only bluffing 10% of the time. 90% of the time they're going for value when they make check raises and big bets and raises post flop. And this is a small sample, but I basically found that pretty close to be true. I found 70%. He says 90% for value, but it's somewhere in that range at a minimum. Took some good notes on studying the hands. The next day, did a hand reading practice, a successful hand reading practice with ace king suited. Ended up turning or rivering. I think I rivered a flush, got extra value because I barreled flop, turn, and river. When I hit, I was barreling, and I got paid off on my flush, which is lovely. Of course, learned from the course. Ed Miller's The Course, skill number 2 right there. Don't pay people off. Great stuff. Took all those good notes. We'll go over the most important parts later. Let's see here. The next day of study, we actually did 2 sessions in one day. Successful hand reading, ace 10 off, where we turned or rivered a flush, 10 high flush, but still got some good value there. Question number 1, what nutted hands could he be doing this with? That's what you always, that's one of those questions you want to ask when you face a raise, when you face a check raise, post flop, when you're being the aggressor as the Cbettor. Let's see here now. We did some filtering, check raises, hand reading practice once again. We posted a hand in the Red Chip Poker Forum. Watched some game tape right there, which was good stuff. Had some power outages on this day, but it was still a good day overall. Day 20 yesterday, the second session of the day yesterday, hand reading practice. It was a success. Now we're 12 out of 17, which is a pretty good rate right there. just under 3/4, under 75% success. Um, Great article by Lou Krieger on pokerology.com about the check raise. So we just learned about check raising, good check raising rules and stuff when we're making it ourselves, and that should help us understand why our opponents are making the check raises they make. Today, this morning, it was a success hand rating, 13 out of 18 now, doing really good. It was an ace jack off hand, and then we watched a poker bank video, learned from that right there. Did some filtering in the session afterwards. I royally screwed up with pocket aces. I admit it. Looking at that hand, it was ugly. Bad move pre-flop, bad move on the flop. It made it so that my fold felt really ugly. It might have been a good fold to his check raise, but it felt bad. If I would have bet more, I would have had a better sense that he had me beat with his check raise. So I'm not a fan of that hand I played, but you can watch session 21 that I posted in YouTube and see how I made that mistake, or see my assessment on my mistake. Let's see here. And then wrapping up the week, this is where we're at right now, review day by day. Okay, the one sheet notes. So at the end of every study session, I put all the notes for that week in a one sheet. And I will be sending this out in today's email. So facing raises as the Cbettor, my one sheet. So this is basically everything, all the most important stuff that I learned through my week of study. You know, we assume we're c-betting for one of two good reasons. Always when you're c-betting, you have to have a reason behind it. You shouldn't just c-bet to c-bet. You know, if we're bluffing, we think our bluff will work and he'll mostly fold his hands. If we're going for value, he can continue with worse hands. Every time you're betting, it's either for value or as a bluff. Every time. It could be for setting up a future bluff, but basically if you're betting and setting up a future bluff as well, you're bluffing right then. You'd prefer him to fold right now. So it's a bluff. So questions to ask when you face the raise. What does my opponent rep with this bet on this card? So especially when they're raising on the turn or river, think about what they possibly had leading up to that card. Now they decided to get aggressive on that card. What are they doing it with? Does it make sense? You want to list the hands, and if you beat most of the hands, go ahead and continue. If every hand that you think they're doing this with beats you, and you don't have a great redraw to a higher hand, a better hand, then just fold. What nutted hands could he be doing this with? Is this opponent capable of bluffing here? What does his sizing mean? A min check raise or a 3x or a 4x check raise? What is he going for here? When to fold to the raise, when a bluff re-raise won't be folded to, and when you don't have enough equity or equity outs to call. And when to continue versus the raise, when he's capable of bluffing over 33% of the time, when you've got his raising range beat. You want to proceed with caution with strong but non-nutted hands. So let's say we turn our flush and it's only a 6-high flush. Well, if we got to the turn with a draw, it's possible he got to the turn with a better draw. The 3 flush hit the turn. It made our hand. It could have made him a better hand. And now he decided to check raise or raise. We need to take that into account and proceed with caution. And before you call or re-raise when you face a raise, have a plan for the future. You want to know that, hey, he's putting in extra money now on the flop. He's possibly going to be putting more money in on the turn and river. Do I want to face those future bets? So PokerTracker 4 filters, these are all the different filters that we reviewed through the week. I'll be sending this to you so you can go through and look at those. Ed Miller says if your opponent is played in a way that suggests a strong hand range, fold all your hands that can't compete with that range. Nice and simple. Aggression equals strength, especially in low-stakes games. Only call if you beat the hand they're repping with their bet. Against fish, your default plan is to value bet again and again until they fight back. And all this stuff. So we will finish this off here with the 5-question quiz. So at the end of every week, I create my one-sheet notes. I also create a 5-question quiz to help myself, just to help me think through everything, you know, a little bit more. So question number 1, how often are your opponents bluffing at the lower stakes? It's a pretty good question. There's my answer. What's the first question you should ask yourself when you face a raise after c-betting? There's my answer. Which street is it more likely for your opponents to get bluffy with raises and check raises? Oh, there's the answer. On the flop, most likely bluffy. It costs less here, but big bets on the turn and river are more likely value raises. What is your default plan when playing in a hand with a fish? Well, bet, bet, bet for value every time. And how should I play versus the raise with a strong but not nutted hand? like a baby flush on the turn 3 flush board. And then there's my answer once again. So this is all the kind of stuff that I really recommend that you do after your week of study. A lot of people find it difficult to study one topic for a good amount of time. That's why I keep things simple. Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS principle in mind. Study 1 hour per day on one theme. This whole week was on the facing raises as the Cbettor theme. Everything I studied was around that theme right there. I just spent 1 hour per week, consumed a lot of stuff, played with this idea in mind, and went through my database and looked at hands with this idea in mind. And that led to all of this, knowledge gathering that I did. Now I have a one sheet, now I have a 5-question quiz, and now I also have a mind map that I can look back through in the future to help remind me of all this stuff. One thing I also have too. So you saw all those filters. Well, bam, they're here within my quick filters as well. So if any time, let me see here. Where'd that one go? Okay, facing a raise after a c-bet. Well, it only happened 6 times in these 1,700 hands, but there it is right there. I save it as a quick filter. So I should actually mention that too. There we go. Not study. Analysis. Yep, so save these as quick filters for future reference and analysis. This is actually really important. Alrighty, cool. So that's the 5-question quiz and the one sheet. Let's finish this puppy off with my mind map here. So I make a mind map. I just use Coggle online. It's a free service. They let you do 3 of these for free. After I do one, I'll save it, of course, as a PDF and as a .png image, and then I'll just with my next mind map, I'll just erase over it and change it right here. As long as I've saved it, I can always go back, recreate it. It takes time, but at least I'm not paying the monthly. I don't even know what the service is because I've never paid for it, but at least I'm not paying that monthly service on it. So if you go to your apps, your Google apps, Coggle is just an app right there. So all the different mind map, I'm going to send you this, so I'm not going to cover it all, but the basic categories around facing flop raises as a c-bettor is my hand strength, my range, bet sizing, opponents and ranges, stack sizes, board texture, my options when it comes to facing the raise, and the future, considering what happens or what could happen in the future before I make my decision now. Alrighty, so that's actually a pretty quick little synopsis of the week. If you are and I hope you are, a member of my 28 Days of Poker Study journey, you'll be getting an email in just a little bit with everything I discussed today, with the one sheet, with the 5-question quiz, with the mind map, and that'll all be sent to you later today in the email. So thank you very much, everybody, for following this week. And then hopefully you're ready for next week. Oh, that's what the last thing I wanted to discuss. So on Monday, I will be back with week 4. And I was thinking about it. I had originally said I want to do a whole week on assessing and preventing tilt. I'm not exactly sure if that's what I'm going to do, but I'm pretty positive right here because I just brainstormed real quick. I have a big list of things. We can talk about just assessing tilt or any tilt that happens post-session, talk about utilizing logic statements, talk about getting good sleep, good eating habits, talk about exercise, talk about meditation, and even meditation apps that can help. I can talk about make sure you don't have any distractions like the kids running around, incomplete tasks, and outside media, etc. So those are things that distract you, things that you can end up getting mad about. Like, let's say the kids are running around, for me and my boys, I try to play when they're not home or when they're in bed late at night. Because if they're running around trying to talk to me, and if I suddenly make a bad decision, I could go on tilt and kind of get mad at myself and get mad at my kids because I blame them because they're distracting me as I'm trying to play, or I blame myself for playing while they're in the house and distracting me for making bad decisions. So, like, no distractions. This is some really good stuff to talk about. Incomplete tasks as well. Let me just mention it now. If I know that, for example, I have to create a podcast, and the podcast should go out today, but I'm playing poker instead. As soon as I lose a lot of money, I blame myself. I'm like, dang it, I shouldn't be playing. I should be working on the podcast. So, like, no distractions is a very important thing. We can also really dive into warm-ups and cool-downs and how those help control the tilt. And there's lots of stuff to read and even MP3s to listen to help you deal with tilt. So, I think next week we'll still be on assessing and preventing tilt because it's probably something that not many people spend a lot of time thinking about or studying other than like reading Jared Tendler or Trisha Cardner's book. So I think we're going to do this. Not sure yet. I'll let you know on Monday. Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for participating this week. And, I hope my travel plans go well this weekend. Got 3 days out of town. Not necessarily fun, but, something got to go do. So I'll see you on Monday. Thank you very much. Take care.